Welcome to the Marketing Intern Spotlight. A marketing intern is a listener who's spreading our message authentically. Hear their story, their passion, and their journey. Enjoy.
Nasser Lubega, welcome to the Backpocket Podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm excited.
Yeah, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. Kind of woke up a little bit late. I woke up at my buddy's place. It was kind of late. I wanted to grab breakfast, but I couldn't, and then I needed to come here. So it's been like a bit of a rush, but not really. And then it was good to see you guys this morning.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a great way to start the day.
I'm glad we booked you at the noon slot, because, walking up these stairs, were you having reminiscing on when you fell down on the last time you were here?
Yeah, so the last time I was at this place, I was with Jack, and we kind of went out that night before. And the next morning, I forgot that I'd climbed up a really steep staircase.
And the stairs are super tight. Like, they're not like normal length stairs.
Right.
So when you're going down them, it's not, and the lights were off, right? It's not easy to get down.
It was like 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
The lights were off. I couldn't really see my step in. And so I think second stair down, and I just slid all the way.
Yeah.
I think it was UAI that came running. You're like, oh my God, are we being robbed?
Well, I didn't know what happened, and then I opened the door, and I didn't know you were staying over, and you're a big dude, and it made a loud noise, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Nasser, are you okay? And you're like, my ankle, man. And then you got up and you walked out of the house, and I was like, all right, I hope he's okay. But you're here now.
I'm here now.
We're here on the Backpocket Podcast, and you've been a listener since the very start, so it's an honor to have you on.
Thank you.
And we've got to know you over the past 5 years through St. Thomas, but not all of our listeners know you. So if you could give us a little background, and our marketing interns a little background of how you got to St. Thomas.
Okay, so my name's Nasser Lubega. I am originally from a country in East Africa called Uganda. I was born there. I grew up there until I was around, 11. And then at that point, I moved to Kenya, which is just next door to the east. And I went to school there. It was a boarding school, international boarding school, kind of a smaller school. I think it ran from what we call year 1 to year 13, which would be kindergarten till around 12th grade, so like the whole span of education. And I think the whole school was around 400 kids, so it wasn't a lot of people. But in fact, what's interesting was we got to know each other so well that we knew each other's family, we knew all the workers and their families, and it was a very tight-knit community. And I was there for 6 years. My friends there became my family. I see these kids 10 months in a year, 9 months in a year. And so then I was there for 6 years.
And that was from age 12 to age 18?
Yeah, around 12 to 17-ish.
Okay.
Because I was always on the younger side of my class.
Sure.
And then at around 17, before I turned 18, I came here. And then I got ready for America. It was another move, another change, another culture.
So how was that like in year 17, that final year of school, looking to apply to universities in America?
That's a good question. So in the school was a British system. And in that system, you don't really know where you're going to go to college until after high school.
Okay.
And so a lot of kids finish high school and then you apply, right? And so you don't really know where you're going to go. But because I had been working on, coming here, I was working on my whole citizenship thing. And so I kind of knew that I was going to come to America. And so I applied to colleges, and I got into St. Thomas was the first one that ever gave me a spot, which is probably why I ended up coming out. I had that thing that, oh my God, I already know where I'm going to go. No one else knew. None of my classmates knew where they were going to go, but I already had a spot. And so my last year of high school, I was kind of doing the senior slide without knowing that that's actually a thing. I just didn't have, I guess I was always serious, but I wasn't as serious as I would have been if I didn't know where I was going to go.
And was there a reason why St. Thomas was early on and why you applied to St. Thomas? Can you remember why that was kind of like on the forefront?
Yeah, so I had visited the U.S. because my mom was here.
Okay.
And so when I came, we visited different colleges. We visited the university, visited the University of Minnesota. We visited St. Thomas. We visited, I think it wasn't Augsburg. It was Carleton.
Okay.
Yeah, Carleton, Hamlin. And so,
And your mom lived in the Twin Cities?
yeah, my
Okay,
mom lives here.
cool.
And so we were trying to figure out where to go. But St. Thomas had, I think I was attracted most to the color purple, the theme at the time. I thought it was beautiful. It was unique. And the buildings were gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so I came and I was like, wow, I could actually be a part of this space. I could be here. And I remember going to, because I was science inclined already, so they took me down to the science buildings. And they kind of, so what they did, at least at that time, was they have a faculty member kind of walk you around, and then you go back to their office and they answer every and any question that you might have. And so I just remember the teacher that they gave me on that during my tour was just so warm, you know. She was very, very kind, very good, and she gave me her card, and I was like, oh my God, this is the first card ever, you know, because we didn't really hand out cards back home.
Sure.
And so I took that with me, and I showed it to my friends as proof that, guys, I'm going to go to college, and you know,
That's sick.
yeah, and so it was that. It was, I think they touched me at it was a soft spot that I had for St. Thomas.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
sweet. This is kind of a stupid question, I think.
No questions are stupid.
Good point.
Yeah.
So, do you have a British accent because you went to a British boarding school and learned English? How how British people would speak it?
So yes and no. I think so. In my high school, and this is probably the first time I'm ever saying this ever. So this is interesting, and some of my friends are listening in, so they will attest to this. We were very harsh. So again, it was an international school. In my class of about 50, we had like over 20 countries represented. Like it was,
Wow.
talk about diversity. It was diverse in every way possible. You have all these people, and we're high schoolers, right? So we're not exactly kind to each other.
Yep.
Someone comes from a different culture, and when you're 15, you couldn't care less about being culturally aware. In your mind, you're like, oh my God, this they do weird things, or they're eating weird food. And so we were very harsh towards one another. And so one of the ways that we were harsh towards one another was how we pronounced words. And so someone comes from a culture where you can't understand what they're saying, and so, or they might say words differently, and you might not be able to pick up on what they're saying, but you're a young kid. And so you're not exactly going to tell them in a nice way. We were assholes. we were not kind. And so I think for me, I guess my tight knit group of friends were all from different parts of Europe and, you know, Africa. But because of how diverse the class was, we would all have so my accent, to answer your question, and then kind of work backwards. My accent is a congregation of all my close friends. So that's why it's not quite British, but it's not quite Ugandan. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Because we were all with each other for 6 years, you know. So we're talking to each other and we're hearing each other's voices. So I think it's that thing where you try and merge, you try and find a median when you have a group. And so we all sound similar. You know, the British kids would obviously sound a little bit more British, but again, we were in this closed space in the middle of nowhere in Kenya. And so we all sound very similar. Same with my brother and his friends, because he was a year younger than me. He had a different group of friends from whom had like a different cultural makeup. So they also sound similar, but they sound different from me. So my brother and I have different accents because we hang around different people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I never would have thought about how your direct, like you said, your family or the people that you hang out around with for all those years have an impact on you, not just socially, but all the way down to your accent. That is awesome.
Very cool.
How often do you get to go back?
Not often enough. And so I've been home twice in the last 5 years.
Wow.
And
For extended lengths those 2 times, or was it?
no, I think the total amount of time I've been there is 7 weeks.
Okay.
And so, or maybe 8. And the first time I went was my sophomore year, that January of sophomore year, so like after fall semester.
Okay.
And the second time I went was the year after that. And I think for me, the reason why I don't go home in part was because I was on this pre-med track, and I was learning a lot of things when I came here. And so a lot of, and so it was a new culture, I didn't know how things went. I didn't even know how, in my school, again, we didn't really care for GPAs. It was your final grades. So I came to a place where your GPA actually matters from freshman year if you want to go to med school, which is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But so your GPA matters, everything matters, and I was learning this along the way. So there's so many things that I had to squeeze into the 4 years of college that required me to sacrifice going back home to see my family.
Wow.
And so I went there the first time. That's that winter between fall semester and spring semester sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went the year after. And the first time I went was weird, seeing people I haven't seen in a while. And the second time was different just because, when you've been here for a while and then you go back, it's easier to see the things that I wasn't seeing before,
What are some of those things?
Like, I care a lot about, like, social issues, but more so poverty, poverty and, like, oppression. Those are things that I really care about. And seeing how the country is, the direction that the country is going in is, so the
Uganda, right?
Uganda,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's just we're in the midst of change, but the change is uncertain, and the change is obviously not very. It's not the most accepted change. There's a lot of things that aren't. I mean, there's a lot of room for growth, but like the room for growth in Uganda is very, very big. And so for me, what does that mean for me? When I went back, I was able to see like my own family's challenges when it comes to things like accessing healthcare. Seeing I had a cousin who had a stone that needed an operation to be taken out, and he had to wait months with this painful thing in there. I think it was a stone. He had something in his ureter, a ureteral stone, and he needed an operation, but he couldn't get it taken out. So he had a pain in his stomach for the longest time until he finally had it done. But even then, the aftercare is not as good. And so after having been here for long enough where it was no longer, just home, it's Uganda, it's different. Now it's different, but not necessarily a good different.
Yeah.
And I was more aware of that, and I haven't been back home since.
Okay. And that was middle of junior year.
Yes.
Okay. And just to kind of connect the dots for me personally and our guests, so your mom was here in Minnesota, and that's you came here to take your college trip. And how long had she been living in Minnesota?
Oh, my mom has been here for a long time.
Okay.
She has a very complicated journey, but I think she started practicing in Minnesota, so she's a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
She started practicing in Minnesota in the year 2000. So she went to Hennepin County for her residency in 2006, and she started practicing in 2009. So she's been a doctor for 10 years in Minnesota.
10 years, okay. So that was right around the time that you went to Kenya for education for your private school?
So I didn't grow up with my mother.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I didn't grow up with my mother. It's a rough... I don't think your listeners are ready for that story.
Okay.
But I didn't grow up with her, and I saw her when I was 3, and then I saw her again when I was like a lot older.
Wow.
And so, yeah, she had her own challenges. The fact that she's a doctor is a testament to, hard work. She had a lot of things going against her. She was a woman. She went to a place where she was in the South too. So like she had a lot of challenges, but she made it. She became a doctor, and now she's here in Minnesota doing that.
So, wow. So you like really didn't grow up with a mom. Then you go out to Minnesota where she's here, and now you get to see her all the time now, right?
I get to see her all the time. She's,
Wow.
she is my mother, and I respect her in that capacity. But I think she also takes up a spot of friend. She is very much a friend. And, now I'm going to tie into more recent events where recently I had a friend die. And, I had to find, dealing with that is very difficult. Depot, a lot of your listeners would know him, who went to St. Thomas. He was a good kid, great friend of mine. And he passed away this past month in February 8th, the 8th of February. And it's been I think I have a new word for this, doozy. I picked up that word. It's been a doozy, It's been different emotions, every day is a bit different. I'm learning how I deal with grief, and so one of the things that I noticed was I don't like to have my emotions on my sleeves. But at the same time, like, so I was dealing with people the same way I would, but then I'd go home and I needed an outlet for the things that I wasn't trying to let myself feel, the things that I'd bottled in. And it was my mom that I would just like, I'd have a whole day where I'm just like stressed out, but I don't know that I'm stressed out. I'm just a little irked. And so then I'd go home and then I'd just like let my mom have it, let her have it until it wasn't yesterday. It was the day before. I called my mom and I was like, damn, I have been a complete douche to this lady. And she's been okay. She hasn't reacted in a negative way. And so I apologized and she was like, yeah, I noticed that you've been doing that. And it's, you have a wound and, you have a wound. And what I'm afraid is that it's a bleeding wound. And what I want you to do is feel free to come home and, if this is how you want to let it out, I'm okay with it. I just don't want you to go out there and bleed onto the people who didn't inflict the wound. I can take it, but, you can't go out to work and, lash out to people the way you've been doing it to me,
Sure.
And stuff like that. And so she's an incredible woman. She is a friend, and she's also, she's a mentor. She's a good person. I look up to her a lot.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the half of it.
Yeah.
And you just sharing that right now on the Back Pocket is really cool. And I mean, you don't have to get into much detail about everything else, but you handling that in that way and having your mom around you who you didn't necessarily grow up with, but still have a relationship with now as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's awesome. I'm glad you have people in your life like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think, so when you were growing up, when you left to Kenya, your brothers and did you have other siblings that came with you? So did you have a lot of family out in Kenya as well, or have you kind of just been latching onto these other families that you have been mentioning?
Yeah. So when I moved to Kenya, I actually remember the date. It was January 5th, 2009.
Wow.
So when I moved there, I moved with my family. So my dad drove me there. It's a 12-hour drive from my house in Uganda to the school. And so we drove there that first day, and then they left. So I was in this country alone. And, that's
at the
age of 12. Yeah, 2009. So I'm born August 96. This was 2009. Maybe the year that I turned, 13, but I was still 12 at the time.
Yeah.
And so I was in this new country by myself. And the bigger challenge for me at the time was I didn't speak the native tongue. And so I just felt, I don't know, I guess I've always had these moments where I'm just like alone and I need like that, I'm in a country, I'm alone. And so I need to adjust, right? And so what do you do? How do you do that? And for me at the time, it was, I need to find ways to connect with people. And, I'm not going to see my family in a long time. So how do I deal with this situation? And so over time, it was creating friendships, people to be around, to be able to show that love, to share that love. Maybe I don't have my family, but I could love these people that I see around every day. And of course, 13 to 16 are rough years for anyone. And some of the people that so I have a really good friend today. I think he might be listening in. Baxter, if you are, shout out, I love you. And
Shout out Baxter.
Shout out to Baxter.
yeah, and Jill and all of you in the group. But like Baxter, this is the story of one of my really good friends today, Baxter. Baxter and I, we had a rough, and so he's part of what I call my created family.
Cool.
And so Baxter and I had a rough introduction. He was bigger than the rest of us. He was weighing 200 pounds when the rest of us had an average weight of 90 to 120 pounds. He was like a man, while the rest of us were barely boys.
Baxter is just a manly name to begin with.
Yeah, let's start there.
His name is Baxter Godfrey.
Whoa,
Badass dude. Yeah,
that guy sounds like a D lineman for Alabama Crimson Tide, dude.
Yeah. He was the best he was a really fast swimmer. He threw the javelin the furthest. He was a quick runner. He was good looking, just like he had everything. And so naturally the rest of us are not going to like him. And so But of course, this is a place. I don't want to say it was the Wild West, but it's kind of like a school where you're all high schoolers, right? Or that's middle school, and there isn't that much guidance. There's oversight. There's parental figures, but there's not enough. Typically each kid has however many parents, 2, 3, whatever. But like this is many kids with like 1 or 2 people overlooking. So there's a lot of time where there's no one seeing what's happening, and so Baxter and I just like we were on a collision course. I came from a country where we just talk smack, and then I went and I met a guy who does not take talking smack, and so I came from all the other friends that I was making didn't mind me talking the way I did, but this guy was not about it, and so we finally meet, and I think it was on one of the field trips that we had. This was a geography trip. And I remember I said something, and then this man said, "All right, this is it," so then he starts to chase me, and I remember just running, because if he had caught me, God knows, I probably wouldn't be here. Not to say that he would kill me, but I probably wouldn't look the same. And so anyway, this was a kid that, God, we were not tight, and so that was year 8, which would have been like 7th grade, and then year 9. Same thing, Baxter is kind of doing his thing, but like Baxter's the big meanie. At least that's how I saw him. And, of course, he's also the same age, so he's also going through his thing, he's angry, he has all these emotions, and that we all do, but like he was bigger, and so you just don't mess with him. And so then, an important point is, so that we used to live in dormitories, and there's 4 people per room, and so Baxter was upstairs because, I don't know, there was not enough room for him downstairs. So it's like a big hall that housed the 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders in like one big place. And so they're each in their rooms depending on what grade they're in. And so Baxter was staying upstairs with like the 8th and the 9th graders when we were, where our grade was. And I remember 10th or 9th grade, year 10, he had to live with us because the other kids moved to a different building, and I remember they put me in a room with him, and this was a kid that I knew as a terrible person, just like has all these emotions, whatever, but like I didn't realize that a lot of people were treating him badly. He was the big guy and we saw him as the bully, but we didn't realize that we were the ones that were bullying him. We would be the ones that would go out and say these things to him just to get a reaction out of him, And so a lot of people would be like complete douches to this guy. And so it reached a point where I was like, damn, I'm living with him now. We're in the same cubicle. I got to get to know him. I got to get to know him. And then so I spoke to him, and then I realized that, okay, fine, yeah, we had our issues, but like
your geometry field trip issue.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big, right?
Yeah. I was like, there's a lot more to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't given him an opportunity. And I guess I also had ulterior motives, because once we left school, remember I told you he was very good looking. Once we left school and we went out, like in Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya, Baxter was the guy. All the girls at all the different schools knew this guy, and he was like the liaison. Every time someone thought of my high school, they thought of him. Oh yeah, like, do you know Baxter? I was like, oh damn. So I need to be his friend too, because
he's the connection, he's the plug.
Yeah, and so anyway. Over time, I decided to get to know him, and we hang out more. We try and find ways to divert our energy. So instead of punching someone's face, we decided to punch like soft boards. I think the ones that they put that you pin things into.
Yeah.
We started punching into those things, and the next year you move to a different building where it's just 2 people per room. And again, some of my other friends, because I had to come in from from Uganda, and some of my other friends who were more local, they moved in quickly, and so that they could shuffle the names, so that I was the last person to go to school that day. And I remember everyone was looking at me from their room saying, you're stuck with him. But like I saw the guy and I was like, damn, like people literally adjusted their flight schedules or whatever so that they can come and not live with a guy, and then I said, that's it. And so then I started talking to him every day. He and I, we were the first people to listen to dubstep music in Nakuru, Kenya. We just like did the same. We started to really get to know each other, and then we elected to live with each other the next year, and then elected to live with each other the next year. And after that, we were inseparable. We were really good friends, to the point I think one of the first days that I truly cried was the day that I said goodbye to that man.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
The origin story to the growth point is awesome. And I think just through that story alone, and many other stories you've already shared already, your level of selflessness and ability to observe things in people, from conversation and interaction, is very incredible. Like, that's something innate in you, and I think you know that about yourself. Do you think that's why do you think that is? Do you think there's something that played a role into that development, or is that just something that's just innate inside you that you've been able to utilize throughout your life?
Well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. I think that I am the way that I am because I've had some rough things happen to me in the past, and I think it's a level of, I call it, so one of the things in my back pocket, I know this is something that is asked all the time, and so yes. I'm gonna come ahead of you here.
Please.
I say that one of the tools in my back pocket is acceptance. And what does it mean? And I don't want to conflate acceptance and resignation, but like acceptance. And for me, that means accepting a situation for what it is in that moment. So an example would be today when I was driving here, some guy cut me off, and then, so when I was pulling out from the place where I grabbed my breakfast, some guy cut me off and almost hit me. And so then I was trying to regroup, and then another guy came, and, I was very, very angry. And so then it was that moment of accepting that, okay, this thing just happened, and you just accepted that, okay, I don't want to impose meaning to it. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening with them. I don't know where they're rushing. Maybe someone's sick, whatever. But I'm not even going to think of that. I'm just going to accept that this person just cut me off. And then just by doing that, it helps me quell my base emotions or my base desires. And then it's more of just, once you accept a situation for what it is in that moment, and then you can employ some of your other tools, whether that's compassion, understanding, whatever. If you're like if it's in the gym, you might accept that, okay, I try to do, this 500-pound bench and I couldn't get it. And, that's okay for now. I accept that I wasn't able to get it today, but it doesn't mean that I accept that where I am. It doesn't mean that I'm going to resign to this. It's just that, okay, that is where I am right now. It's not shameful. None of that. I'm just going to try and work better next time. So how does that relate to people? I think, when I see someone, I try to get to know them, and I think I learned that from the way that I interacted with some of my friends back in high school.
Sure.
Where everyone's different, and you hear that every day. But we are we're the same, but we're also very different, and it is those differences that I always try and seek out. I try and hear someone for who they are, not what they are. And for me, looking the way I do and having grown up in a different place with people from many different countries, you can't narrow yourself down to a certain, it's good to have ideals and say this is what's good, this is what isn't, but it's also really important to be able to hear and listen other things, other ways of life, and to hear other stories that you might not be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it is that desire to let people explain themselves without me having to explain them to myself without even really getting to know them.
Can you say that one more time?
So it is, yeah. So I give someone the opportunity to explain themselves to me, rather than me coming with my own perceptions of who I think they are, based on, even if it's based on an interaction I saw them have with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I really wouldn't have context. I don't know why that interaction went the way that it went. And so if I see that person the next time, it's easy for me to say, oh, well, they were being a dick to so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know why that was the case. So I always try and give someone an opportunity to express themselves to me, or to tell me who they are, to tell their story.
And the reason why I had you say that one more time is because I noticed that immediately from that first time I interacted with you freshman year, whether it was hanging out with the engineers, because that's kind of was my like pathway to the scientific building, or in the weight room. I can't remember what the first time was, but when I had a conversation with you that first time, I knew that you were giving me your full attention. You were listening more intently than anyone that had probably in a long time, just because we're all young. We're 18-year-olds. We're not truly listening to the other person. And I was like, damn, I left that conversation. I was like, this kid is a good man. I can't wait to get to know him more. And it was really cool, like, having that interaction with you every now and then, because we didn't play football together and we weren't taking the same classes. So we didn't see each other that often. But when we did, maybe it was once a month or once every other month, it felt like we never really had like an hour together, but we had 5 minutes. And it was really cool seeing you in the weight room, deadlifting 405 like a monster, or passing by in class and just catching up and saying, what's up? So this has been awesome. Just even the 25 minutes or whatever, how long it's been having the conversation, getting to know you even more.
Thank you. Appreciate
it. And I have those like same things. Like I would just see, I remember meeting you for the first time in Ireland, and like you were a smaller kid, and you took so much interest in like what I was going to do that night or whatever, and we got to end up hanging out that night, and we probably got hammered, but it was so cool. Allegedly. I mean, we were all 18 and probably not drinking in Ireland. We didn't really drink at all or go to TIFFs. But I digress. And seeing you like grow into this unbelievable specimen in the weight room over those like a couple of years was incredible. Like, you put in some serious work in the weight room, and you did it all by yourself, right? I mean, you stayed committed, and it was really fun to like hear that. But one question I had for you was, you were away from your family, all right? I brought that up before, but you had to rely on being uncomfortable in these spaces, but then at the same time, you knew this is where you were going to be. You couldn't choose where, like, you couldn't just choose to go back home, right? So you had to be there, and you developed this incredible skill to relate to other people and find friends and like find this ultimate family. Is that true of saying? Okay. That blows my mind. Yeah. That's awesome. And have you seen like that translate to the Twin Cities now? And like, has that helped you get, I mean, you just finished applying to med school,
that's perfect transition.
Yeah.
So you spent your time at St. Thomas going into pre-med.
Yeah.
And using all these awesome skills that you've gathered, and walk me through the past since we graduated in May. It's not been an easy few months. There's been more than just the pre-med, obviously, like you've shared, but let's focus on that part. How's that been trying to get into med school?
Yeah, I have to say, I have to keep saying thank you, because it's weird to say, oh, I have all these great skills that I employ. Maybe it's a level of trying to be humble, so if I do seem like I'm kicking away the compliment, it's not that. It's I want to be humble.
Yes.
But I do appreciate the compliment. And I will say that I guess my line of work, what I want to do, and, kind of going back to that acceptance thing, another tool that I have in there, or that I try to employ, is compassion. And I work in the ER, and so to kind of give a rundown of what I've done since graduation till this moment, and then give it a little bit more flesh. I applied to medical school. So I took my Mcat, which is the medical college admissions test. Don't quote me. The Mcat is like the big exam that you have to take before you can start medical school. And I took that, and I did okay. And then, you apply. The whole process, I mean, I'm still in the process, and I started it last March. So I took the Mcat in March. So I started this process in January of last year, and I'm still in it. And so May is when I sent out what they call the primary application. So that takes about a month. It needs to get verified. You need to have transcripts and whatnot sent in, and then the secondary, and then after that, after you submit your primary application to the schools that you're interested in, they can send you what they call a secondary application. Depending on the school, some schools screen for different metrics, like, oh, you have to be in this percentile of your GPA, of GPA spread or this percentile of the Mcat score or whatever. But anyway, you send out your primary application, and schools that want you to talk more about yourself will send you a secondary application. And so to kind of bring it back to this, when you're one of the questions, I mean, many of the questions that they ask you in your secondary application are things like, talk about yourself. Why do you want to go into medicine? Or, how do you see the practice? Like, what is medicine to you? What is the importance of a doctor? What does a doctor do? And, that kind of thing. And what makes you qualified to pursue this line of work? And so it forces you, and I applied to a lot of schools. I applied to 30-something schools. Yeah, it was very expensive. And so I'm constantly writing this, like I'm constantly answering these questions, and I have to be honest to myself, like, why am I really doing this? And so by really looking into that question, like, what does it mean? Why medicine? What does a doctor do? And why is their work important? And so I work in an ER. I work as a medical scribe. So, like, I'm not even on the totem pole. I'm so far down the totem pole that I'm not even on it. But I'm still in the room with a patient. And I'm still in the room with the family. And it's the ER, so anything and everything can happen. I've seen some awful cases in there. I've seen some beautiful cases. We recently had, like, someone give birth in our garage, and just, like, watch that moment of life coming, just to see life. And then, the same day we saw someone pass away. So it's like, it's the whole span of the human experience. And this is in one ER, same day. I'm typing these essays, but I also go to work every day and I'm looking at it. And then, you see the interaction, you see the different doctors, their different personalities, some things you like that some providers do, some things you don't like. But then you adjust yourself. You say, okay, this person did this. Maybe I wouldn't have done it that way. So I like to journal. So sometimes I write down that, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or maybe this wouldn't have gone this way. But of course, being HIPAA friendly and stuff like that. And so over time, you see what matters to me, or what is a good way to be, why medicine. And so medicine for me has become more of a spiritual thing. Like whenever I come into an interaction with someone, again, try to get that understanding, but also that compassion. And if it's a very sick patient or a family member of a very sick patient, I want them to know that they're being heard, because everyone else might be so busy doing the medicinal part, and I'm there typing notes. Right? So I'm the scribe. I'm just noting down what's happening. Oh, we gave this drug, we gave that drug, and timestamp. Oh, I rechecked, whatever. So when I'm in the room, I'm doing all that, but I'm also trying to find a way to let the family know that we are here for you, and nothing else matters in the world. Outside of this room, nothing else matters. We want to impose meaning to this person's moment, because no one wants to come to the ER unless you're working there. No one wants to come. And this is another thing that some of us newer scribes are trying to, like my buddy Josiah, who's also a friend of you guys.
Yeah,
something that we talk about all the time is compassion. Someone comes into the ER, maybe it might sound like a BS complaint, because there's a lot of things that might sound like BS, but like they chose to come to foot the ER bill. They're going to take this big bill that it's a double charge, facility charge and provider charge. They're coming at 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday. So they're not at their baseline, whether they're actually medicinally ill, or even if it's just like a psychological thing, they're not comfortable. And so how do you make this person leave this room feeling like, okay, I made the right choice? You never want a patient leaving saying, I shouldn't have gone in. You don't want them to have shame. You don't want them to
mistake.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because we are, medicine is a very intimate, you're going into someone's body. Even just an x-ray, you're seeing into them. It's a CAT scan. You're seeing into someone's body. That's too invasive. That's very intimate. And so you want someone to know that they were vulnerable in front of you, but it's okay. You didn't abuse that. And so trying to foster these skills when we're young before we go in, because it's hard to keep it. In the ER, fine, I say I have compassion in my back pocket, but that's I keep it in my back pocket. I try not to wear it all the time, because you don't want to take all these cases with you all the time.
Sure.
Right.
But you want to have it as a tool to employ in the right moment. So I try to employ that when I'm interacting with the family in some way, whether it's just like physical communication. I don't know the word. Nonverbals. Try to give nonverbals that show that I am listening, I'm paying attention, or just to say something nice.
Yep.
And whatnot. And so
And is this a self-taught thing that you're kind of employing into the medical field, or is this something they teach you throughout pre-med and go in? Because you and Josiah have the conversation, so you can feed off each other and educate it from each perspective. But are you able to have these conversations with other people in the field, or has this kind of been like kind of your own methodology of approaching medicine?
I think I think a lot of it is being conscious about it. And again, for me, I brought it up in the context of I was writing essays about this, and so I wanted to make it real. I wanted to actually employ what I'm saying that I'm doing. I want to do it, and so by doing it all the time, it becomes more natural.
Okay.
But also, ER nurses are great. ER nurses are some of the most. In fact, just again yesterday, was it the day before yesterday? I was with Josiah again, and I think I made the offhanded comment that I'm going to marry an ER nurse. But it's like these are the most patient people. They see so much. They get so much done to them. We had a patient the other day who tried to beat up an ER nurse, and so they are very compassionate people. But at the same time, again, you can't be compassionate all the time, not in a bad way, but again, you don't want to take all these cases with you home.
Sure.
And so just watching how the different providers who maybe they have had to learn it, or maybe it's more innate, watching how the people who have been in the field for long enough do this, you kind of pick up on it. You say, okay, if I just had a patient die in room 1, I'm going to see my patient in room 2 with a cold. I don't want to let them know that, oh my God, you really shouldn't be here. You have a cold. You have the flu. It's a virus. You're out of the window for this medication called Tamiflu. Like, there's nothing we're going to do for you here. You don't want to, once you've just seen someone pass away and you move into the next room, it's not the same magnitude.
Yes.
But again, this person, that's their worst at that moment.
Yep.
And so, again, seeing how the different doctors like almost switch and do that. And so you pick up on it. And so then you say, oh, this is really awesome. And then, once you're out in the community, once you're out amongst your friends, it's something that you see a lot. It's almost a necessity at work, but then you start to find yourself employing it too. And I please redirect me if I veer off the question, because I tend to do that.
No, that's awesome.
Just to bring it, what did you want to say?
No, please go.
So kind of bringing it to the secondary interview.
Mm-hmm.
It's a time for you to articulate your thoughts. It's a time for you to personalize your application for these schools. And hopefully, like, after that secondary, does it go to a third and then it goes to acceptance or decline? Okay.
Correct.
So this is your this is your first impression. Have you been able to articulate your thoughts and articulate your why and why you want to get into medicine with these people? Like, how has the whole application process been going?
I think one of my biggest weaknesses is an inability sometimes to keep quiet, or to follow a thought to what I want to say is its logical conclusion and stop there. I always feel a need to, say more and say more and say more. And so for my interview process, that was, I was able to say what I cared about, and I was able to bring examples of, different things, whether it's like a learning opportunity or one of my inspirations and one of the reasons why I'm aspiring to do this. I was able to bring examples from that.
Cool.
And I think it's having examples to give was one thing that's always good in the interview process. Also, again, a lot of the sacrifices from not going home and having all those experiences again to draw from. But also, I think one thing that helped me, and this is not advice for everyone, but it's something that helped me just because people are different, is whenever I try to script myself going into an interview, I would start to choke because I I guess I speak more from the heart many times.
Yeah.
And so when I'm speaking from a sheet of paper, for me, it doesn't really work very well. So, and again, when I'm speaking from the heart in an interview room, I might say too much, or, I might ramble, which is something I always fear. I'm, moving into rambling territory. But it helped with my interviews for sure, because I have not been rejected from a single interview, like after the interviews that I attended, at least for medical school.
Good work.
And so maybe it's a good thing.
Yes.
But
Absolutely, man.
Uh-oh.
And, there's other things out there in your day-to-day life that you're not as good at. And this is your average quality. So this is a great question, great transition here, because you've been awesome, and there's so many qualities inside you that you can empower you to make those awesome leaps. But this is a quality that you're trying to work on every day. You're not great at it all the time. Sometimes you're actually very bad at it, but other times you're good at it. So Nasser, what is your average quality?
Ooh, so my average quality, which has nothing to do with anything we've talked about today, is my singing.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
I can't see that.
I cannot sing for the life of me, but I try. So like every day I have these sounds coming out of my throat. I'm trying to sing, and like
what genre of music would you try to be singing?
Like more pop, sometimes like jazz.
Okay.
A few blues songs that I might know,
How about like Seven Bridges Road by the Eagles? Can you just hammer that out right away?
I would try. I would certainly try. I'm always, but like when I actually do it, I observe the faces around, and it's like, like you're not the worst. But like there's always room for growth. And I talked to Josiah, who's he's a singer,
brilliant singer.
He's so good at singing.
And like I ask him subtle questions like, oh, did you go to voice classes, or how did you do this? And they're like, yeah, you gotta find a place where you're comfortable, and you gotta work in it. And so that's something that I'm working on. And maybe it would be better if I had like a teacher, and I still have to figure out this crippling student debt thing. But once I figure that out, I might be able to afford someone to help me sing, because I love it. And I can try to sing like Leon Bridges, or to try and sing something, but sometimes I even try and sing Lion King. I just anything, but like I'm just not there yet.
And are you singing in the like this is where I'm singing in the shower, I'm singing in the car, but I'm belting it in like the most obnoxious way possible just to get out all my emotions, and that's the best time to do it.
Yeah. I was singing on my way here. I was like,
I was singing last night, putting beer in the fridge.
Oh yeah.
It was wild.
What were you singing?
I was like, "There's not enough beer in here." Said something like that.
Yeah.
It was absurd.
That's pretty good, dude.
Yeah. I think I've been working on it. Yeah. I'm trying to tie in singing into my comedy bits.
Yeah.
See what happens.
And can I also say something, guys?
Yeah.
We were talking about this a little bit off air, but I am so impressed with where you guys have taken this podcast. I just want to let you know, and I want your listeners to also hear this. These men have really, I saw this podcast at its nascency, when we were going out to find, equipment. We're going out to find speakers, and we're trying to figure out, okay, so I got to go at 2:00 to go find this guy who's working at Best Buy to see if he can.
Our man, Benny.
Benny Wilson, yeah, I have to give him a shout out. Yeah.
Yes.
So to find Benny and, to find the good, speakers, and I don't see the ones that you guys got. So I'm guessing they were
the most affordable one at the time, and
yes.
We've been able to upgrade since.
Exactly.
$50.
There's been a lot of growth. Sound quality. The people that you're bringing on are from a wider span. I see. Even, some of them are people that we went to school with. Some of them are people that are just successful in their different fields. And you're able to get these people on. You've rebranded. You had a brand and you rebranded, and it's great. It's amazing. And thank you for doing something that you love, and for wanting to share that with the rest of us. I appreciate that. And
well, thank you. And it really revolves back to you and people such as yourself that can come on our show and share these stories, because our job is just to keep that conversation in a momentous flow of entertaining yet very inspirational and informational. That's our job. It's all the guests and the people that come on and want to share their stories. We are just the cogs in the wheel, and
we're the operators.
We're
the ones just trying to make the conversation great and really keep you on a path that would help everybody else.
Yeah.
And anyways.
And not to put you on a spot here, but what is something that if you have like a guest who said something so profound that you've always kind of looked back upon, is there any such moment that you want to share? Or
That's a great question.
I have one.
Please.
We had on David Meltzer, and not a lot of people know who this guy is, but he's a really successful entrepreneur who runs this company called Sports One Marketing and was the CEO of Lee Steinberg, which is a big sports agency. And we got this guy on just by like flying by the seat of our pants, just trying to get this guy on. And he looked at us and he was like, "You two are radically humble for 22-year-olds. And if I could have my daughters and my son grow up to be as humble as you guys are, then that would make me so happy."
That's amazing.
And I've always kept that in my back pocket of just like, humility is so important.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and we did it just because we wanted to get this guy on, and we wanted to have a conversation with him, and that was what we got back from him.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been, I mean, I've also been watching you like doing stand up and doing all these things, putting yourself out there. But again, humility. I think one of my favorite shows, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Uncle Iroh says humility is the true antidote to shame. And like just being humble and just being yourself, and you're not ashamed because you're being humble, you're being yourself. And so seeing you up there, making yourself vulnerable, cracking jokes, laughing at the jokes, and then, seeing the energy and the rest of us saying, wow, good job, Declan.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you, dude.
His pursuit in comedy has been one of the coolest things, and it's so early in its stages, but he's just continuing to learn from it. It's awesome. Yeah. So that's great that you noticed that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Another question we have is there someone out there that you think we should have on our show? So we love challenging ourselves and getting new guests, such as you mentioned. Is there anyone out there that you think we should have on our show?
So I was thinking about this, and so I think you should have your buddy Josiah on, and I think he owes the audience of the Back Pocket the story of you skiing and the incident that happened during the ski trip that you guys just had, and just like to talk about that, but also just to share his experiences, maybe to give a different perspective on the pre-med route, and also because he's an interesting person to talk to. So that's one person, but also hypothetically speaking, this is like a big shot guy.
Please lay it on us.
His name is Seth Godin.
Yes.
Yes. If you can find a way to even, I don't know, maybe even to have him write in, or just anything that he can contribute to the Back Pocket, because he's always saying, go out there, make a ruckus, do whatever. And I listen to him every Wednesday. It's kind of like my introduction to the business world, since I'm so medically and so sciencey. And so just listening to that, and then watching you guys actually doing a lot of what he says, target an audience. You don't need to do something for everyone. You just got to do something for some people that love it. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in what he shares, or at least I found value in it. And so that is someone that I would love, maybe not today or tomorrow, but like if the Back Pocket can get Seth Godin, I think everyone would win that day. It's a high order, but
that is the perfect challenge, because people take it both directions, and you gave us both balances: Josiah, who we can have on tomorrow, and Seth Godin, who we can have on in 6 months or 2 years. But we'll lay that foundation tomorrow or today, and
as you know, you're now 1 degree away from that person, right? Like, I know exactly how I'm getting Seth Godin on, because I've listened to him on Mark Nitri's Humans 2.0 podcast, and we had Mark on our podcast. Easy. But that's freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah, great challenge.
Great challenge. Another quick question for you. Since you've listened to our podcast from the beginning, what have been your like favorite Back Pocket memories or episodes?
Let me think. Oh, this is I have to say, so I was recently catching up, and I have to say I really liked, so this is more recent, but I liked Joachim's energy. Joachim came on here and really shared his heart, talking about how some kid was looking up to him and how he took that responsibility to make sure that he didn't let them down. So that kind of stuck with me, maybe because it's more recent. But some of the older episodes, I remember when you guys were phoning your family, something like cookies. I remember it had something to do with cookies, and I think
Chorizo cupcakes, dude.
Yeah, cupcakes. That's it. It was cupcakes. And you guys phoned in. I think you were asking for recipes, but also just like talking about how things came out. And just hearing it was your sister?
It was my cousin.
Your cousin,
Yep.
yes. Just like hearing her talk about it. I just remember I was driving down. Was it Madison? I was going somewhere, and I had this playing, and I was like, "This is amazing! This is amazing." I listened to the whole podcast, and yeah, so that definitely has been one of my favorite podcasts, and I couldn't quote it because it's been so long, but it's still in there,
which is awesome. It's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you brought that up. Because that's just like spur of the moment things that we do that we don't necessarily know what's going to hit and stick in people's memory bank, and that's one of the things.
I think that was during the time when you'd call your marketing interns and just like ask them field questions.
Yep.
And so you fielded that question to her, and just like watching that interaction, I was like, this is so awesome.
Yes.
Good work, guys.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and then Joachim too was just incredible. I mean, that man came at it. We were kind of lulled in energy right before because it was the 4th interview of that day, but there was no hesitating right when he spoke into that first sound. We were ready to go Joachim style.
And we had seen his growth insane. Like, he had grown so much over the 6 weeks that we had in podcast when we were going through our guest planning and like, all right, who's going to be the first Marketing Intern Spotlight of season 3? Without a hesitation, we were like, it's Austin Joachim. And so we built that up big time, and he brought the energy. I drank way too much coffee before that.
Yeah.
And then when he came into just going back and listening to that, I was like, man, I drank too much coffee.
That's awesome.
That was awesome, though. Thanks for that feedback. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But trapping the puck and bringing it to our final question, Nasser. This has been incredible. You're an awesome person, so thank you so much for sharing your story so far.
When do you leave for med school, by the way?
Oh, yeah. So I start medical school. I mean, I still have to decide, but I think I have a good idea where I want to go. I want to go to the UW-Madison, and their program starts on August 19th.
Okay.
So
I just want to get you on one more time before you leave.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So August 19th, I'm thinking May would be a good time to get me on because I'd still be here.
Okay.
In June, I might need to travel back home because I haven't been home since whenever. And then July, I might go to see some of my buddies in Europe, Baxter and some of Jill and
Where's
Adrian.
Baxter now?
So Baxter's in England. Jill, another good friend of mine, is in Belgium. We have Kush in our group. He's in Australia. We have Adrian, who's Adrian's in Amsterdam. Oh, not Amsterdam. He's in Netherlands. Wow. And then we have Nick Delaray, who I'm not quite sure. I think he's in Germany. And then we have, God, I hope I'm not forgetting some. We have William. Yes, William's also in England.
Don't forget about William.
Damn.
And so I want to go see these kids and, see some of my other friends who aren't in Europe. But
dude, I need to spread my wings. I'm a little small boy right now.
Yeah. I only know people like in the state, or not in the state, in the country. I don't have a lot of global influence. But that's amazing, though.
Okay.
That's so sick.
We digress here.
Yeah.
Final question, Nasser.
Yes.
What did you learn today from the moment that you woke up to when we're having this conversation?
I learned that I learned that there is value in watching The Bachelor. What do I mean?
What do you mean?
Yeah, so I was watching the most recent episode, and they taught their audience how to eat, like, those like little breads, that they serve you before the meal. So prior to watching The Bachelor, I would just spread my butter on this thing and just like bite the whole thing. But we learned Southern etiquette that you're supposed to tear off a bite-sized piece and you butter only the size piece that you're gonna eat, and you eat the whole thing, and then you pinch off a little bit, and then that's what you eat, and then you butter that little bit, and then that's what you eat. You don't butter the whole bread. It's not good etiquette.
Wow.
And so
that's an awesome tidbit. You took that a completely different direction than I would have ever imagined. And that's awesome that you went that way.
Hell yeah. I'm going to start doing that.
Me too. You learned that in Alabama? Southern etiquette.
There you go, Sam.
Beautiful thing.
There you go, dude.
Well, Nasser, that's a wrap on the Back Pocket Podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.